Alright, let's walk through Clam AV on Linux Mint from start to finish, like you're sitting with me and setting it up in real time. This is a full, calm, no-rush walkthrough meant to make sense even if you've never touched antivirus tools on Linux before. Take a breath. Linux Mint is already pretty safe by design, but Clam AV is useful for scanning downloads, USB drives, shared Windows files, or systems that move data between different machines. Think of it as a hygiene tool, not a panic button. Let's begin. When you're on the Linux Mint desktop, the first thing you want to do is open the terminal. Nothing scary here, just a clean slate where we'll take this step by step. The first thing we do is make sure the system knows about the latest packages. This avoids weird issues later, so we refresh the package list and let Mint check what's available. You'll type the update command, press enter, and wait a moment. If it asks for your password, that's normal. You won't see the password as you type, just enter it and continue. Once that's done, we install Clam AV itself. This installs the scanning engine, not a graphical interface. Linux tools usually start simple, and that's a good thing. You'll run the install command, confirm with yes when asked, and let it finish. It usually takes less than a minute. At this point, Clam AV is installed, but it's not fully ready yet. One important thing to understand is that Clam AV relies on virus definition databases. Without those, it's basically blind. So the next step is updating those definitions. Linux Mint disables automatic updates for Clam AV databases by default to avoid conflicts during installation. So before updating, we stop the background service briefly. This ensures the update runs cleanly. Now we manually update the virus definitions using the freshclam command. This is an important moment. You'll see text scrolling by as it downloads the latest signatures. This may take a little time on the first run because it's pulling everything fresh. Once that finishes successfully, Clam AV is officially ready to scan. Now let's talk about how scanning actually works, because this is where most tutorials rush and confuse people. Clam AV is command line based, which sounds intimidating, but the commands are actually logical. You tell it what to scan, and it tells you what it finds. That's it. Let's start with something safe and simple. Say you want to scan your downloads folder. This is the most common use case. You run a scan command followed by the path to your downloads directory. The scan begins, and you'll see it checking files one by one. While it's scanning, you might notice that it doesn't show much unless it finds something. That's normal. Silence usually means everything is clean. When the scan finishes, you'll see a summary at the bottom. Files scanned, infected files found, and time taken. If it says 0 infected files, you're good. Next, let's talk about scanning external devices, like USB drives. This is one of the best reasons to use Clam AV on Linux Mint. When you plug in a USB drive, Mint mounts it somewhere under the media directory. You can find it by opening the file manager and right-clicking the USB drive, then selecting Properties. Once you know the path, you can scan it the same way you scanned downloads. This is especially useful if that USB drive is shared with Windows systems. Even if Linux itself isn't affected, you don't want to pass malware along. Now let's address a common question. What happens if Clam AV actually finds something? By default, Clam AV does not delete files automatically. It reports them. This is a good thing. Automatic deletion can cause data loss if there's a false positive. If a file is flagged, you'll see its path and the name of the threat. At that point, you can decide what to do. Often, the safest option is simply deleting the file manually, especially if it's something you downloaded and don't recognize. If you want Clam AV to automatically remove infected files during a scan, you can add an option to the scan command. This tells Clam AV to remove anything it flags. I recommend only doing this once you're comfortable and scanning non-critical folders. Now let's talk about performance, because people worry about this a lot. Clam AV is lightweight, but scanning large directories like your whole home folder can take time. That's normal. Antivirus scanning is disk-intensive. If you want to scan your whole system, do it when you're not actively working. Also, scanning system directories is usually unnecessary on Linux Mint unless you're investigating something specific. Focus on downloads, shared folders, external drives, and user files. Now let's cover automation, gently, without going overboard. You can schedule regular scans using cron, which is Linux's built-in scheduler. This is optional. If you're new, it's okay to skip this. Manual scans already cover most real-world needs.
But if you want peace of mind, you can set up a weekly scan of your downloads folder. Once configured, it runs quietly in the background and logs results. No pop-ups, no interruptions. Speaking of logs, Clam AV keeps logs that you can review if you want details. These logs are helpful if you're troubleshooting or just curious about what was scanned and when. Now let's briefly talk about graphical interfaces because some people prefer them. Linux Ment's software manager includes a graphical front end for Clam AV called ClamAV. This is optional. It doesn't add scanning power, just a visual layer. If you like buttons and menus, it's a fine addition. If you're comfortable with the terminal, you don't need it at all. One important thing to say clearly is this. Clam AV on Linux is not about fear. It's about responsibility, especially if you share files with others or work in mixed environments. Linux itself is already resilient, but being cautious is never a bad thing. Before we wrap up, let's recap the flow so it sticks in your head. You install Clam AV, you update its virus definitions, you scan specific folders or devices when needed, you review results calmly, you delete or handle flagged files intentionally. That's it. No constant alerts, no system slowdown, no drama. If you're using Linux Mint as a daily driver, Clam AV is a quiet companion, not a watchdog barking all day. You decide when to use it, and that control is part of what makes Linux feel grown up. And that's the full picture. From installation to real-world use, without hype, without fear, and without overcomplication. If you found this helpful, you now understand Clam AV better than most people who install it and forget about it. And that's exactly where you want to be.